apart from the obvious, which is that property funds are very risky at the moment. Now, I don't know would the council be interested in calling CCLA to come and kind of explain what their current thinking is and what their current strategy is. I know if we do, that Woughton would be interested in coming to hear it as well.
Yeah, I mean, my personal view is that it would be worth hearing this. At the moment, that £50,000 is sitting in, is it the Bank of Ireland account, Steve?
No, it's actually in the Lloyd's account. In
the Lloyd's current account, so it's earning no interest at all.
No, well, neither account earns any interest now.
Yeah, which isn't good. I mean, it's only marginally worse than anywhere else that's obvious. We are only, as a council, able to invest in certain grade accounts. But my suggestion would be that we do ask CCLA to talk to us. The thing that's really taken the big hit is commercial property, and I don't know if that property bond is exclusively in that or what, but they did suspend investments a little while ago, and I don't know if they've unsuspended them yet.
They have.
Yeah,
they're taking applications again.
Now, I did suggest that it might be appropriate either for the whole council, but certainly for the finance committee members, which is Kay, Darren, Russell, I think, to be there. I'll be there. I mean, if you can't, I appreciate you're all busy or whatever. I'm sure someone else can substitute, but at a minimum, I think we ought to do that, if not all of us. But just to hear what they've got to say. I mean, we did hear what they had to say before we made the decision to invest with them. So would we like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, sensible.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, if you'd like to arrange that. Do you want to talk about anything else on this list, Steve?
I don't think so. Everything on there is the situation as it stands at the moment, as far as I'm aware.
Okay. Number 2, which is the War Memorial. We do need to bring this to a bit of a close because, you know, my assertion was that with the trees overhanging the War Memorial, it was going to get chlorophyll just dripping on it and staining it. And if we're going to spend money, you know, having it cleaned properly, it's a bit of a waste of money if you're just going to have, you know, the leaves coming along and spoiling it again. But Luke is saying that cutting them back further will affect the trees and look unsightly. But I don't know if other councillors have got a view. I personally think they could stand with being cut back a bit more on the War Memorial side, and it would still look okay. But could other people have a look? It's difficult to answer the question if you don't explicitly go and look.
I mean, I think the thing is that I'm actually in the middle of this, that the parish council tell me that the trees need cutting back more, and I tell Luke that the trees need cutting back more, and Luke tells me that they'll be unsightly and it might affect the trees, etc., etc. I mean, I think the way I've described it in the clerk's report is that Luke will have another look, and if he really thinks that, then he should talk to parish councillors.
Yeah. I mean, if he wants to give any of us, but certainly for me, because I'm not going anywhere and I'm not working, unlike some, a call, I'll happily join in there at a socially distanced, sort of, in a socially distanced way. Hello, George. Okay, look, let's...
Sorry, Phil. Do you want to leave that we'll wait for Luke to get back, or I'll prod Luke in?
I'll just say, if he wants to give me a call and meet me there, it's very easy for me just to pop out. And anyone else who wants to come, I'll let me know, and I'll do that. Right. Is there anything else on this list that we want to talk about? Number 11, I was put to shame this morning when Steve rang me to see if I'd done it, which I'd forgotten. So I did do it this afternoon, and I sent a general note covering that and the rural street name plates and something else as well, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're done on that, are we? Shall we move? Can we move on? The next item is the neighbourhood plan update. There's not much of an update. It's just that Andrew Ashcroft, who is the man who presented at the seminar that MKC ran and was quite impressive. He has agreed to examine our plan. So I think we get a fair hearing from him. So that's very good that he's agreed to examine the plan. Just to let you know that Phillips Planning, who are the representatives of the owner of Gobbys Field, on Friday wrote to Steve asking for something called the observations report, which was one of the documents that we submitted to MKC. But MKC actually hadn't put it up on their website. I think I know why. It's because I sent all the documents once. David Blandhammer then asked us to make a few minor changes in some of the other documents, which I did, and returned those documents to him, which he then put up on the website, but he didn't put up the observations data. However, my advice to Steve was that as the neighbourhood plan or draft neighbourhood plan is now owned by MKC, the proper route for inquiries is through MKC. And I think we will muddy the pot if we start liaising with people outside of MKC on what is their consultation. You know, we've had our consultation that finished a while ago. Yeah. So Steve did write to them to that effect, and I wrote to David Blandhammer just saying this is coming your way, basically. So that's everything on the neighbourhood plan. The next one was for you, Andrew, actually. We had a little bit of an exchange about new planning regulations for affordable housing, which Dorothy Cortman had raised with me, and did give me some concern as to whether it would have any impact on Maltings 2 and the site there. And you wrote back saying it was quite complicated and you would be prepared to give a sort of an explanation to the parish council.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not as complicated as I actually made it out to be, Phil, but I think you and Steve will both recall the meeting that we had with John Palmer when we were talking about Maltings 2. Dorothy's basically, I think, got her wires crossed. I mean, the application on Eastfield Drive has long since been dismissed anyway. But broadly speaking, developers are trying to use a loophole in the law around all plans being established that, broadly speaking, says Milton Keynes hasn't delivered on its prescribed number of affordable houses, which is absolutely right, it hasn't. And therefore, they're trying to kind of say anything that offers a large amount of affordable housing can be granted as an exception to policy because it will help Milton Keynes make up the shortfall in affordable housing. Broadly speaking, that isn't true, and the fact that it's true, but it's not one that's going to hold water. And the fact that Eastfield Drive was thrown out by the inspector proves it, because Eastfield Drive at the last minute came in with almost 100% affordable housing on it, just to try and swing it, and it didn't work. It hasn't held weight. So I think Dorothy was probably, I didn't want to say it too publicly, but I think Dorothy was probably getting a little bit overly concerned about an issue that I don't think is going to concern us. And certainly in a conversation with John Palmer after we had that initial exchange, just to check I was right, he said he wouldn't be too overly concerned about it at the moment either. There isn't anything kind of new in national planning law that's going to come and bite us. Okay.
I mean, because that is exactly the argument that Maltings 2 are using for 100% affordable. So that's good information to have.
Yeah, and it's the one they've used from the start, and it's the one that Eastfield Drive tried to use and didn't hold and didn't hold water. Indeed, you know, the argument was found quite compelling that to put a large amount of affordable houses together, for want of a better word, tends to create ghettos.
Indeed. Okay, thank you, Andrew. 4.4 then is a report really on just reopening the village hall outdoor gym and play areas. I appreciate the first two are Russell's, and the last one is really John and Dave. But I think Russell, for the purpose of convenience, it's probably easier if you just talk on all of them.
Yeah. Okay. We had a meeting of the village hall committee last week, where we went through the process for reopening village halls using under the government guidelines. We sent out questionnaires to all the users. Most of them are not going to start until at least September, some of them not until the end of the year. The only one that may and will probably start in the latter half of August is Pilates. So we also set up a cleaning regime that users will be responsible for the leaving the hall in a fit and COVID-free state by wiping everything down that they've used, and also everything that's likely to be touched, like light switches and door handles and things. And the Stacey, the cleaner, will clean before every hire and sanitize it. She will also sanitize whatever tables and chairs will be required. We were told in the meeting that chairs with fabric were not allowed, but I've been unable to find that anywhere in the guidelines. I don't know whether you found it, Phil.
I haven't. I have seen it reported elsewhere.
Right.
I've also seen, I mean, in particular, talking about play groups and so on not being allowed to have soft toys or anything fabric. But I've also seen other it debunked in other places where they say that's just not true.
Yeah.
And in fact, some educational people were coming back and saying, you know, it was going to be ridiculous and make it very hard. So I'm not sure there is any government direction or law that says you can't have it. Kay, would you like to add on that?
We're using fabric chairs at school, as far as I know. There's some certainly downstairs. Teacher chairs are definitely fabric ones. And I'm assuming that as school are absolutely rigorous with the guidelines, that can't, I wouldn't have thought it'd be mandatory then.
Okay, Andrew, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's only much of what you read is guidance, not laws or rules anyway. And the word is guidance. I know that the Church of England are advising that if you have soft, if you're opening your churches and you've got kind of soft seating, i.e. cushions on your pews, they are advising that you remove them, but it's only advising that you remove them. There is nothing in law that says anything about it, as far as I'm aware. I mean, it's basically everything you can do to make things wipeable and cleanable, do, but if you can't, they're not stopping you.
Okay.
Right,
well,
every single chair in the village hall actually is fabric, got a fabric cushion on it. So we have to be buying new chairs if it was mandatory.
So I think the message is, unless we get guidance to the contrary, Russell, that we carry on using those fabric chairs.
Yeah.
I mean, in any case, I mean, we, as you pointed out, there's only Pilates who, I think they say they want less than half a dozen chairs. It's very small chair usage, because I think, did you also say at VHC that you're not proposing to do party hires at this time anyway?
No, yes, we're not proposing to do any hiring out apart from to village groups, because that's the way to bring COVID in.
Could just spray the chairs with anti-bac.
Yeah, that's probably what we'll have to do. There is an item further down in the agenda to purchase a steam cleaner as well, which would help.
Okay, do you want to talk about the outdoor gym and play areas?
Yeah, the outdoor gym and play areas opened on July the 4th. There are notices warning people that it's at their own risk. They're responsible for cleaning the equipment that they use before and afterwards. And it also reminds them that COVID can live for up to 3 days on hard surfaces like outdoor gym equipment and play areas.
Okay.
And that's it.
Thank you very much, Russell. I would just add for ward councillors here that the advice that we are getting from MKC on these things is just dreadful. Steve received, I mean, we got guidance on opening outdoor gyms and play areas from BALC, our county association.
Yeah.
At the beginning of last week, or perhaps the week before, with the references.
It was well before. It was well before that.
Yeah, well before that was it. Yeah. We went through it, and we realised that the first thing you've got to do is you've got to do a health and safety inspection, and then do a risk assessment, and then you open the meeting. So we held a special meeting. It wasn't a public meeting, but a special meeting to work through all these things, and came up with, what we wanted to do earlier, in the middle of last week. And then Russell produced the appropriate signage, putting onus on people. And Dave and I inspected the areas to make sure they were physically ready. I think it was 6:45 in the evening of the Friday.
7, Phil.
6:45.
I was going to say it was 7:45, Phil. 6:47 to be exact.
Yeah, we get a note from Emily Darlington, just with a few points mentioned. No mention of the risk analysis or the health and safety inspection, which are mandatory by law that you have to do, and expecting parish councils to have done it. And as Steve pointed out, most parish clerks switch their computers off at the latest at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and wouldn't be open until the Monday. So, that is pretty unuseful. I was going to say something rude, but really very, very useless, really. It's just par for the course with the parishes, to be honest. They've been no help at all in any.
If you're going to refrain from being rude, perhaps let me be slightly unmayoral then for a moment. And I think part of the problem here, I think a lot of the problem here is that Emily Darlington herself, who, without delving into the realms of politics and sharing private grief that you don't want to know, has aspirations to be leader of the council, having failed to be selected to be a member of parliament, and is basically taking over the running of departments herself and kind of telling the staff to get behind her and let her take the limelight to try and get some of the glory, and is succeeding only in making a complete arse of herself. And I can't put it any more bluntly or supremely than that. She's done it over this. She's done it over closing Newport Pagnell High Street. She's done it over an immense amount of things, and this has made her look incredibly stupid. And privately, though not publicly, I've sent emails pretty much to that effect. Milton Keynes Council has been pretty good in a number of things, and in quite a number of things over COVID. They've actually been pretty good in the way they've responded to things in this particular issue, and in fact in everything that kind of comes back to Emily Darlington, Davina Miller-Shipp, and some of those underneath her. I'm afraid it's next to useless, or even worse, and I can't put it more bluntly than that. I think Steve was fairly refined in his comments when he sent them out, but to send that at 6:45 the night before you're supposed to do it, I don't wonder that a good number of parishes, rural parishes, have not reopened their play areas even now. Hanslope, for example, is still closed.
Okay, George, I think you were next.
Yeah. There is going to be, what's the name of the thing? A task and something group?
Task and finish group. Task and finish group
into the council's performance on COVID-19 so far, with particular reference to finding out what they've done wrong in case there is a second wave. This is going to be chaired by Councillor David Hopkins. And one of the things that I've already highlighted for our people to bring up is the poor communications with parishes. It's been highlighted.
It's not been poor, it's almost been non-existent. I think that was we had one emergency notice at the beginning in May, when it told us that the cold weather alert system was now operational.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. I have then asked not for financial support, but for advice on where we could get grants, because you've got some parishes which have don't own their community halls, like Hanslope, who were able to get a grant for their community hall because they weren't part of the parish council. You've got other parishes like us who have leased out their sports grounds, so the sports ground was able to get a grant, but there must be lots of parishes who do neither. And even those who have let them out needed to have some advice to tell them to do that. And you would expect our principal authority to do something instead of just abrogating it. And I've explicitly asked Heather Baker for financial advice, which she sent to finance, and we've had nothing back.
Well,
it
as I
just
say,
as
this
instructed.
has been highlighted for the Task and Finish group to look into, because I raised it at our last Conservative group meeting, and the Olney ward councillors and the Danesborough ward councillors said they'd had exactly the same from their rural parishes. They have a bit more communication with the inner city parishes, which are their own wards, but the rural parishes have been, as you say, ignored, and this will be raised at the Task and Finish group.
Yeah, very happy to come and give testimony if you want to do that. Right, Steve, I think was next.
Yeah, I've just got one more point to raise on Emily Darlington's communication. The fact that they were telling schools, they were giving communications to schools to give through the children without a by your leave to any of the local communities. Now, we've already issued one set of instructions through notices and on Facebook, etc. It might have been, I mean, as it happened, there were just a couple of little things that they were saying that we hadn't included because we decided not to. But it could have been that the communication that Emily was giving out through the schools conflicted with our communications. And that would just look stupid. I was a bit ironic when I raised that point when I circulated her email.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not on.
Yeah. And by the way, the fish ponds, well, actually both of our play areas technically belong to MKC. I mean, you know, they wouldn't have had much. Russell, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, going back to what George was saying, isn't it the case that Bucks County Council decided that village halls that were owned by parish councils were eligible for the grant, yet Milton Keynes?
No, that's not the case. No,
right.
No.
Okay.
Can we deal with that offline? It's a bit a long story to take everybody's time.
Right. Okay.
That's not the case. Okay. Can we move on then?
Phil, can I? Sorry, sorry. John's wanted to speak as well. I'll come in at the end if I may.
Yeah.
Just to report, Chair, that we did well. I didn't, but everyone did, getting the signs up in the play areas, and to a person, up to lunchtime on Saturday, young families were coming over, mums and young children, and washed every single item in the play area that they used before and afterwards, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. The only people that have not done that are a group of teenagers on bicycles. I've not seen them in the village. They must be from another village, who got there Sunday. But they didn't make any mess or anything, but they were the only people that didn't wipe up after them.
Because we've got fabulous villagers, that's why.
Yeah, we have really good villagers. I was skeptical, but everyone did it.
I think the bicyclists, and I'm not being entirely facetious here, I think they might be from Hanslope.
They're not from here, that's for sure.
No, they are definitely from Hanslope, and may or may not be, I don't know, but may or may not be one of the reasons why Hanslope hasn't opened their play area. I know exactly who they are, and they're beyond talking to, and they're beyond sense, because I'm afraid they're high on the white powder.
Right.
Could be.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to speak? Andrew?
Yeah, sorry, Phil, while I've got the microphone, whilst I don't get involved in committee stuff this year, and I'm not going to, George has already flagged the Task and Finish group. I think if Steve's prepared to do it, if you're prepared to put a log together of the things where you feel both MKC have done things well, if there are any, and those that haven't, that would actually be really useful. And if you are prepared to come to a Task and Finish group, George can kind of offer you as a witness to David Hopkins. I think it's reasonable to say, without trying to blow sunshine at places I shouldn't, that actually when you come and speak at things like this, you do actually get listened to. So you might be better received in a constructively critical way than some others might be.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm prepared. I'm certainly prepared to do that, George, and I'll
I would be.
Produce a log. Yeah.
Oh, you can do that, are you, Phil?
I'll do that, Steve, and I'll work with you and on it. Make sure it's complete. Right. Can we move on now then? I think we're now moving on to planning applications. And we've got the traveller site at Yardley Gobian. Now, Steve, did you manage to find our objection?
I ran out of time today, Phil. I know I looked for it in the past. I just couldn't find it. I don't know why. I searched on Northants. I searched on Travellers. I
Okay.
just couldn't
May
find
I
it.
make a start and then I'll open it up? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the South Northants planning website, but there are objections already there from Yardley Gobian Parish Council, from Inland Waterways, which is really about the impact it would have on the quality of the environment, and Northants Police, who are saying that this is the seat of a number of criminal investigations and a site where stolen vehicles were taken, you know, and which they discovered with trackers and so on, and they are opposed to it. So I would, if we have nothing else to say, and given that we are an adjoining parish council right up in the north of us, we join Yardley Gobian, that we could, just as our starter for this discussion, say that we as a parish council would like to support the submissions made by Yardley Gobian Parish Council, the Inland Waterways and Northants Police. Right, that's a kind of starter. Would anyone else like to speak on this?
Yeah, the clerk to Yardley Gobian Parish Council had a whole host of objections.
Yes.
There were, must have been about 40 different ones, which were the objections to the previous applications that have been made at this site.
Yeah.
In addition to that, I think there's grave danger of traffic, because the only way out is a 90-degree bend into the main A508. And I think the entrance is also in a bit of a blind spot as well.
Yeah. Yes, Kay.
The planning application is for one mobile, one touring caravan, day room, etc. But I don't think it would stop at that. If you open the doors.
Yes, that's part of the objection that Yardley Gobian have made. There's no natural limit to that site.
I mean, my son-in-law's just had a load of travellers decide to camp out on their cricket pitch, and they were only there for 2 days, but the mess that they left was, and the damage they did in those 2 days was just terrible, before the council actually did move them on because it's a council-owned pitch. And what they left behind was really, really not nice. And I think they shoot themselves in the foot, to be honest, because if they were, I think true travellers, true gypsies, actually do care about their environment and things, but I think there's a lot that don't these days.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, look, I mean, the issue here is, are we going to object? I propose that we do, and I've proposed, rather than listing out, as Russell said, the number of the objections that Yardley Gobian Parish Council has made is very, very long. It would wear Steve's fingers out retyping all that lot. That we just, you know, say we are supportive of those. But would anyone like to add any more? And by the way, this has to be on the grounds of planning policies. You can't just just say we don't like travellers. Well, Dave.
Yeah, all right, Phil. No, I totally agree with what you've just said, Phil. I mean, this all right, it's an adjoining parish. Let's keep it simple. We're supporting another parish and their objections.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Okay. All right. I think. John, you wanted to speak.
I found the Northamptonshire planning papers very difficult to navigate, actually. So I went to look at the site, having asked a local where it was. And you're absolutely right about the coming into the main road. Yeah. That would be a really dangerous entry and exit. I think it's both, isn't it? Isn't it? It's one way in and out in that piece of road. That'd be very dangerous. Memory serves me that around about 1980 there was problems on the soil there.
Yes. Yeah. If you read the,
it's just contaminated.
That's what.
Yeah, there was some kind of sewage station, was it, Russell, that they talk about?
Yeah.
And there's lots of asbestos in the soil, and it's got to be cleansed before it can be used. Okay.
Yeah, I remember that from then. I think we should do what you suggest, Chair, and just support Yardley Council.
Are we all? Can just check? We're all in favour of that? Yeah. That's great. Okay, let's go with that one.
We did. We didn't have a second for that, Phil. So I'll second it. I'll second it.
That's fine. And I can see a little hand come up. The first finger of the meeting from Mr. Councillor Hines.
Right.
Oh,
But-
brilliant.
So nothing.
Right, now let's move back then. Section 6, does anyone want to talk about any of those applications? No. Can we move on then to 7? We need to consider and agree to a public excluded part 2 because we've got some quotes that we need to look at. I'll propose that. I need a seconder. That's John, I think, and all in favour, yeah. This is for boarding the loft areas of the village hall. Right, 7.2, Councillor Hines to comment on the 2050 futures impacts that they circulated.
Oh, my moments of glory. Right. Well, my initial reaction when I saw this report and they were asking for feedback, my reaction is based on one point only. I'm sure everyone else has got other points to make, but my concern is obviously with this working at home and the situation we're in, it's to do with housing. And will Milton Keynes Council now look at the potential for large areas of office blocks, office space becoming available because workforces will no longer be working in there? I mean, to a certain degree, the report has sort of touched on that, but will that actually make them rethink the way they look at planning and maybe look at doing infill where a lot of these offices are, rather than go and stomp all over the countryside? In effect, that's all I've got to say. There's a lot more I could say, but I'm sure everyone else has got other points on there. But the report itself covers a lot of stuff, but that's my only comment on it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We can certainly respond to the consultation that way. I mean, certainly one of the things that I was particularly irritated about was to discover that Western Underwood, who was much later in superfast broadband, was actually getting fibre to the home. And when I inquired about this, I was told, oh yes, we now do that. So I said, well, what about us slowies, you know, who only got fibre to the cabinet? And this is Martin Smith. And he said, oh no, you're too late. We're not retrofitting. Now, if you are getting a move towards more home working, which I think is the thrust of what Dave is saying.
Yeah.
And I think I would suggest that we include in our comments that Milton Keynes does need to consider expanding a programme for faster internet to homes, i.e. fibre to home across the borough, and not just in basically the tail end Charlies who weren't considered in the first round. I know I can see Councillor Bowyer smiling smugly there, but you know, I do think it's a serious point that I still remember Philip Sawbridge, you know, in the very first days when we were trying to get superfast broadband into the village, saying, you know, they just couldn't work without superfast broadband in his business units. And I think that's one thing. I think another point is on cycleways. You know, if you're going to try and make the move away from public transport, which may well turn out to be a long-term thing, then you have to consider supporting other means of transport. And that does mean that things like the Sustrans network does need to be upgraded. I mean, you know, we've talked before about that wretched track. Indeed, John has got this action that you mentioned in the original Clerk's report about getting Sustrans track improved, which is necessary if you're going to start people doing that. And then there is the associated, and it's not within the power of Milton Keynes Council, of course, but lobbying for appropriate legislation for electric bikes, because actually even Castlethorpe and Hounslow are still too far for a lot of people to actually pedal the whole way. But I believe that the legislation on electric bikes isn't entirely clear. You're meant to be insured and I don't know, whatever it is, but that clarified. So those are a couple of points that I would add in, building on the move away from public transport and the move towards home working. And the other point that is not particularly, well, I'll whack it in anyway, which is, I think they need to think a little bit more carefully. This is really a COVID thing rather than anything else, about the opening of waste sites, because there's been, and I'm sure ward councillors will be aware of this, a huge increase in fly tipping. I mean, not only the one that we had in our village, but I had Kevin Wilson came round the other day to deliver some more litter bin sacks, and we just were chatting across the garden, and he was saying, you know, they've really got a huge problem across the borough with this fly tipping, and of course a lot of it will be because, you know, you have to book to go in and you have to pay to dispose of your waste and all the rest of it. So there's some real disincentives to going to the waste and recycling centres, and I think you know, something better's got to be done, or it's going to disfigure the borough. Really, I don't know whether that's a legitimate response to this particular bit, or just a rant. Really,
I think the
I think
biggest.
it's a very sorry, Kay, go on.
Right, I think the biggest disincentive is that they're just lazy and they just feel it's everybody else's job to do something. So I think any responsible citizen wouldn't do that. So,
Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got a reasonable point about the. I mean, the tips were late opening, but they've got open. The booking system is being chaotic, and I rather suspect that's another one of the things that will go on the list from the Task and Finish group that we mentioned 5 and 10 minutes ago, because I know people are finding it. I mean, Kevin's absolutely right in what he says, though I have to be honest. We've had 3 episodes of fly tipping that I've reported myself in the ward in the last fortnight. It's all been cleared up within 72 hours, bar the one that there was one of them that was 4 days. And that was basically because Kevin was on holiday when I first emailed him, and it took him 36 hours to pick it up before he got to it. They are being slightly slower than in clearing up fly tipping for 2 reasons. One, because the longer they leave it there, the more people notice it and the more it tends to shame people. But also, secondly, they are sending somebody out to trawl through it to try and find the source of where it comes from before they then pick it up and remove it. And one of them that was actually in the gateway at Gayhurst meant that when they'd gone through it, they found something to trace it back to. And somebody, we don't know whether it was the people who tipped it or the people who were the source of the rubbish in the first place, were fined 250 quid. So it does work. And, you know, I have to say, although the issues of the tips are one thing that will be looked at, I actually have to think, I have to say in this instance, I think Kevin Wilson and his team are doing a pretty good job trying to get on top of it and trying to get it cleared up. Incidentally, if anybody's interested, the one at Bullington End has been reported. Kevin's away until tomorrow, so we'll pick the email up when he gets in tomorrow, and I suspect it will be gone before the end of the week. I put a statement, comment on Facebook page yesterday saying, "Don't touch it for goodness sake."
Okay, I think George and then Kay. George, you're muted. You're muted.
I'm looking for my button. With regard to the conversion of brownfield sites and offices into accommodation, as Dave mentioned, you should have had a notification in from the council that they are putting in an Article 4 direction to remove the permitted rights for conversion to residential from office. And there's a consultation on that, which goes on from the 2nd of July to the 24th of July. So if the parish council feels that we should be converting unused offices in central Milton Keynes into flats rather than building on the green belt and green areas, then it may well be worth you submitting something to that consultation. Have you received that, Steve?
I haven't seen it, George, but I'm sure I haven't.
Came through on the 2nd of July, and it said it was to all councillors and all parish councils. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, please.
Okay. I mean, I think my response on that would be that, you know, we have to take the point that Dave is making, that there won't be the same demand for office space as there was pre-COVID, and that's probably a long-term trend. But I'm pleased to see them taking the permitted development rights away, because that would does allow the conversion without provision of associated facilities such as parking, which I know is a big issue down at the main station.
Station Square. Yeah.
I personally don't object to that, but I do think that generally doing that, but with conditions, i.e. the affordable housing that I saw in a recent application, with associated parking and any other facilities, I would suggest as part of our response. I think Kay is next, actually.
Just a quickie, I would like to say that I have found the bin men absolutely wonderful during all this, and they've taken stuff that they wouldn't normally take. I just asked them, big planks of wood and stuff like that, which I'd normally have to take to the tip, and I've just asked them, and they've just bunged it on the back of the lorry for me. So just a compliment there. Yeah,
but they didn't clear out Oliver's work shed for him, did they? John.
Two things, Chair. Firstly, on the waste areas, when is the booking-in system stopping? Because across the nation, it isn't happening. It's just in MK. Northampton aren't doing it. London aren't doing it. Surrey aren't doing it. So why are we doing it?
Yeah, well, I think that is an issue.
Yeah, and I think
soon answer that.
Second thing was, just what a funny old world it is. You get a pandemic, and having fought for years with Milton Keynes to get people out of their cars and onto buses, we're now acknowledging they don't want to go on buses, so we've got to find another way.
Yeah.
On your bike, John, on your bike.
Indeed.
Cycle King have sold as many cycles in 2.5 months as they sold in the whole of the previous year.
Have they really?
I can tell you, because they've sold one to me.
Brilliant stuff.
Yeah. Phil, if I can just come back on the one that George and Dave were talking about. I think the one you referred to was the conversion of Bowback House, the old HMRC offices.
Yes, it is.
In Milton Keynes. It was actually granted on Thursday night.
Yes,
the committee took a. I'm not sure. I think the word I use is a pragmatic and brave decision to grant it against officer recommendation. Actually, broadly speaking, because the permitted development rights meant they could have got about 140 flats with absolutely no affordable housing, where they went and got 300 and got about 25 units or something. So it was way below policy, but that's what they were going to end up with. It's a strange one, but they are happening, and actually, if they're getting those sort of things granted in Milton Keynes, it is helping the 5-year land supply. Rather, I thought I'd just throw that one in for good measure.
Yeah. So let's try and draw this. We're responding to a consultation. Dave is rightly saying that we would like to see unwanted office space converted into homes for all sorts of reasons, but with appropriate provision for necessary facilities and with affordable housing. Yeah, so that's one point. Second point, I would like to say, that we would like the borough to consider a borough-wide fibre to the home programme to take us on to the next stage. And thirdly, the improvement of cycleways to make them viable, particularly from the further out parts of the the rural donut, if you call it that way, so you can get in, which doesn't mean, of course, improving our Sustrans track. And if necessary, any guidance or legalisation of things like electric bikes to aid that process. So that's what I'm suggesting as our response. Anyone want to add anything to that? Okay, and we're all happy with that, are we? Yeah. Okay, let's go with that then. Thank you. Right, 7.3. To replace the backboard at the basketball nets at the sports ground. Russell.
Yeah, this was requested at the Sports Grounds Committee, Sports Ground Association online meeting that we had. I can't remember, Steve, whether we got a price for it or not. I know it's quite easy to fix, isn't it?
Yeah, we are through a price. I spoke to Neil today. He hasn't got a price, but he said that it shouldn't be too expensive. I mean, if you're happy, I would suggest an upper limit of £200.
Yeah, I doubt very much whether it would even be that.
I doubt it would be anything like that, but that gives us a bit of wiggle room.
Okay. So can I suggest then that the motion is to delegate authority to Steve plus 2 councillors to approve a. Do we do that, Steve, or is it just you for £200?
I can approve the payment of £200.
Yeah. Steve, just to go ahead and up to £200 on replacing those backboards. Okay. Steve, you've got one down here to join a community solar scheme for Milton Keynes Parish and Town Councils.
Yeah. Well, I raised it really for the councillors to consider and haven't given it an awful lot more interest, if you like, save from asking the town clerk at Stony Stratford how they're getting on with it, and she said that they haven't got any results back yet, but they're expecting to make fair savings from actually generating electricity in that way, but she hasn't got any results as yet. I mean, I haven't looked at it sufficiently to be able to recommend anything strongly. Only that it is a scheme, and it is a kind of centrally run scheme on behalf of parish and town councils, and just ask the parish council whether they want to give it any more attention.
Okay, Russell.
I think at the moment it's an offer to come and talk to us, to explain it to us, isn't it, Steve?
I don't even know that much, Russell.
Yeah, I think it is. I would certainly like to hear about it anyway.
I mean, John.
Sorry, I haven't got any audience tonight because I've got 9 people only.
13.
Oh, have we?
It has been up. It has been up to 20.
Oh, okay, Russ. I just say I'd agree with Russell. I'd like to hear more about it.
It's gone down to 12.
Oh, okay.
I mean, my comments would be that there are 3 buildings that it could potentially go on: the Village Hall, the Cricket Pavilion, and the Sports Pavilion. I think those are the only ones. On the Village Hall, we're currently at the back end of a Regulation 16 consultation on a modified neighbourhood plan, one of the main features of which is that it introduces some limitations on, in particular, roof lines on certain buildings of interest which are listed, one of which is the Village Hall. And I find it almost impossible to imagine the parish council having just put forward buildings of interest, protection of buildings of interest, to slap solar panels on the top of the Village Hall. I mean, it's that I do find strange. So you then turn to the other buildings, and whilst I wouldn't have a problem in theory with putting solar panels on either of those, they're modern buildings, I don't think they would look out of place. I just can't see that the level of usage of them would warrant it being done. So I don't mind these people coming along and talking to us. Of course, it was always interesting to hear these things, but I would personally find it very, very difficult in the light of our modified neighbourhood plan to consider putting it on the Village Hall. Steve?
Does unused electricity not go back into the grid and you get compensated for it?
Yeah.
Well, if that's, I'm happy for, to talk on that. Okay, I think you beat Dave just by a nose.
You can get tiles and stuff that actually look, solar panels that actually look like tiles now. And it depends on the solar panels that they're looking at, because there's obviously 2 types. So one you'd be able to heat and generate water. The other one just probably some water if it was sunny. But so it really depends on the type, and you can get them to be in keeping with what's already there.
Yeah, that's one that, believe it or not, Tesla have got in the States, but they've actually not put it out. they're only doing it within range of the Tesla factory in the States. But anyway, Dave, you were next.
Yeah, just to follow on, I would like to hear more about it, and
Yeah.
the sort of questions that Kay's sort of raising, I'd like us to ask those questions and actually get answers on them.
Yeah, fair enough. And Steve, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, could I just add that I know we thought about the sports buildings in the past, and I can't remember where we ended up with that, but this potentially might give us a bandwagon to jump on board and not try and engineer anything ourselves. It will give us the opportunity, if we want to do this, to do it quite simply as part of a program that's going on, I don't know, all over the country.
Yeah. Well, look, I think all of us have expressed an interest to hear the people. I mean, I've expressed some reservations about putting solar panels on top of the village hall, but you know, I think we're all. So, shall we just agree then? We'll ask Steve to get them to come and talk to us at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Right. Next item on the agenda is Russell to talk about purchasing a floor steamer for the village hall for sanitising purposes.
Yes, not only for sanitising purposes, but for speed as well, because it'll halve the amount of time it takes to actually clean the village floor, as well as killing any bacteria and viruses that are on the floor.
And the floor will accommodate steam.
Yes, steam cleaners can be used on any floor, including heavy-duty vinyl. The floor in the village hall is of the equivalent that's used in airports. It's really heavy-duty stuff.
What, for runways?
No, for terminals.
And the cost, Russell?
Terminals and taxiways. It's a very expensive one. Would be about £200. I think you're talking 200.
200.
You're talking probably about 150, something like that. That's including the VAT. So as we're vatable, it'll be 20% less for us.
Yeah. Kay?
We've got a steam cleaner. I can highly recommend them. They're brilliant.
Which one have you got?
We've got a Shark.
Right. Yeah, that was the one. One of the ones we're thinking of. Yeah.
Yeah. John?
No, I just agree with that. They're very, very good. Very effective.
Right. Okay. Well, if no one else wants to speak, all those in favour then?
I love the way Dave's found his button.
Yeah.
Chairman, this is far too consensual tonight. Where's Ian Markham?
I'm saying nothing. Sorry, can I just is the action with Russell to go and investigate the best one and purchase of his own volition, or do you want to?
Yes, I think we're approving a purchase of an appropriate steamer of a value £150, I think.
But my question is, who are you tasking to work out?
Well, I think it's Russell will sort it out with the village hall committee. Yeah,
I'm quite happy to do it.
Yeah, make more of the village hall cleaner really, and I think the parish council committee members as well. That's Dave and John, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, just on a technical point, Chair, should we say up to 200? It's 150, I think, from memory. Some of them are just over that.
That's what I've done, John.
I think the Shark is less than that. I think
Is it? Okay, fine.
Yeah, I think
I've
okay.
put up to 200.
Oh, fine. Thank you.
I mean, we do have to make sure it's an industrial weighted one. I know we bought them is it called a Henry or something?
Yeah,
many years ago, and I think it was
that's a Hoover basically. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean steamer, but we bought it and it wasn't. It was domestic rather than and it wasn't any good.
Cleaner, not Hoover.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So next one is social distancing materials for the village hall. Russell.
Yes, this is things like marking tape for queuing up outside, so that people adhere to. We decided at the village hall committee meeting to make the social distancing 2 meters because there's no reason for it to be less than 2 meters.
Good.
Okay. And it's other signage as well.
Yeah, I mean, in the longer term, that may be difficult. I mean, in bars and things, don't they? Isn't it one meter with face masks and things?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I mean,
there is not going to be the density of people in the village hall to justify that. So 2 meters is what we decided.
Well, not yet, but yeah. Anyway, there's a list that Russell has sent out, and it's all very small, you know, £2, £4.
Yeah,
Can we just leave Steve to authorise that on his delegated authority? Everyone happy with that? Yeah.
It might be worth it if there's anything that's needed for the gym, outdoor gym and play areas as well, to add the signage to this order.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not really sure what you can do there, because you can't really put. I mean, there aren't toilets.
No, there's
we're
no way
not putting hand sanitizer,
and you
so
can't mark out social distancing either on
you
grass,
can't.
can you?
Yeah, on grass, no. So I can't see that any of these would particularly apply. Okay, you just tell Steve what you want, then Russell, and
right. It's basically on the
on that list.
on the order that I've given you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, let's move on then. There's a request from SLCC for us all to write to the Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, to ask for support for parish councils. I have to say the 3 bullet points that are listed in this SLCC thing, which are business rates relief, which we don't have, we don't pay business rates, permission for councils to create their own COVID-19 revenue recovery package through capitalising a specific expenditure, doesn't seem relevant, because we don't really make that stronger distinction between revenue and capital. Reinstatement of the government grant to meet an increase in council tax benefit payments. Well, I think our benefit from LCTR was something like £16 or something.
It's negligible.
It was so, to be honest, none of these really help, but I suppose in solidarity, I suppose we could do that.
That was the point I was going to raise, that I think we should support other parish councils who might be in a different predicament to us.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that it would be much more helpful if the business grants, or the grants that were made to almost every other organisation in the country who ran, you know, halls and sports grounds, didn't specifically exclude precepting organisations, which is what it did in the small print in Appendix Z5 or something, which I missed on the first pass round. Surprise, surprise. It was real Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy stuff, that. And I would personally like to see, you know, saying, how about not excluding precepting bodies from the grant systems that you're making?
Sorry, Chair. I don't think there is an opportunity to comment. I think it's the thing is, are we supporting or not? Not are we adding to?
Really? Is that the reading of it? We can't.
My reading is you write to the Secretary of State broadly supporting it, and you can do what you want.
Yeah, I would say, why don't we write to the Secretary of State saying we support it, because it does affect, you know, a lot of councils in our sector, but say, you know, in addition, please would you consider not excluding precepting organisations from the various grants that have been made available, because, you know, in some cases we have no means of recovering that income.
Are you talking about for the future, or are you talking? I mean, that horse has bolted now.
Yeah, well, it may come back. You may not want it to come back, but it may. I mean, I think the principle is precepting organisations shouldn't have been excluded.
Well, let's say that, Chair, because you know, we're not going to get a chance to write to the Secretary of State over much else, so throw it in.
Yeah.
You better make sure you write it to Dear Secretary of State, because it may have changed very shortly.
Yeah.
Right. Are we all happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Let's move on then. 7.8 is consider any actions to assist preschool to hibernate. As you know, preschool have advised that they're basically not going to continue, which is very, very disappointing. And effectively, they're not doing any this year. They're not going to restart in September. They've told the parents, they've told MKC. I hope that there will be an opportunity, perhaps in a year or so, if somebody in the village is prepared to look at a slightly different way of offering a service, perhaps with a little bit more time coverage during the day to help working mums, because finishing early is not good for them, and holiday cover is another one, the school terms. You know, there may be a business opportunity there, and of course, poor old preschool, we're trying to drum up business, just as the COVID-19 thing broke, and lots of people are clearly very reluctant to make commitments. So it really was a very, very bad piece of timing, but that's life, isn't it? What I would like the parish council to consider are really three things that I can think of. One is that we here commit to look after their equipment for them in the main cupboard that they've got. There have been some questions about what is going to happen to the equipment that's in the garden, and I think we need to discuss that with preschool, because I think some of it will deteriorate, and I just don't know what you're going to do with it, to be honest. There's a wigwam, I think, out there, but anyway,
the wigwam's gone. I think it's basically just cupboards now.
Is it
storage things?
Yeah. So we commit to saying we will keep their equipment, and we probably will need to look in it, periodically every 3 months or so, to make sure it's not going moldy or something. But other than that, secondly, the garden, which Russell's going to come on to in the next item on the agenda anyway, about actions to tidy that up. But preschool had, in exchange, as some of you will remember, for some permissions that we gave them, undertook that they would maintain that back garden, which they're obviously now not in a position to do. And the third one is finance. Now, they've got quite a lot of money. I'm trying to persuade them not just to hand it back to Milton Keynes Council. Apparently, it has to be kept in some form of trust. It can't just be given. For example, my opening shot was, look, if you give it to the parish council, we'll ring fence it and then give it to somebody else when they open up. But apparently it's got to be in some form of trust. So I would again offer, with your agreement, and probably through Russell, that individual councillors would offer to act as trustees, or even the parish council would act as trustees, just as we do for the Charity for the Poor.
Yes.
So in some way, just to protect that money and make sure it stays ring fenced for the benefit of the residents and children of Castlethorpe, and doesn't get sucked into some borough-wide morass, really. So those are the three things. Well, the second one, the garden, Russell will come on to in a moment. But Kay,
I was going to say about the garden. I was wondering whether that one of the school might want to take it on, so they could do some gardening with the children.
Well, they might. Yeah.
Nice project.
I think they have got a little bit of a garden themselves, haven't they? Isn't that lower area, the back garden of the adjacent house that was the old schoolhouse? Isn't that got some garden where they can do some digging? But anyway, it's a good idea, Kay. But firstly, is everyone happy with the storing the equipment?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Because there will be pressure from other users, I'm sure, Russell, to nick that space. Secondly, on finance, that we would be prepared either as a body or as individuals to act as trustees to protect the money if that was a way through this.
Yeah.
Yes.
For Russell or Steve to offer that to Fiona Endersby, who's the chair. And then we come to the garden. So given those 2 points we're happy with, Russell, would you now like to go on to 7.9 and talk about the garden?
Yeah, I hadn't actually considered the school taking it over, but if they were willing to do so, that would solve all our problems, really.
Yeah, cracking idea.
Otherwise, if they don't, it was suggested at the village hall committee meeting that maybe we should have a task force of volunteers from the village to tidy it up, make sure the lawn is done properly. It's a bit mouthy even at the moment. Maybe even get somebody like Green Thumb in to try and make it better. But basically, it does need tidying up.
Yeah. Well, shall we leave it with the village hall committee just to, you know, I mean, that would be fine. I mean, if not, we can always ask the handyman just to sort of keep it mown.
Well, he does mow it. He mowed it the other day.
The problem is that there's less and less grass there to mow now. It's more,
I mean,
that's soil.
That's going to be the problem with Green Thumb. They need something to work with.
Yeah.
Well, look, shall we just leave it this year through? If it really doesn't recover and just looks like rubbish, maybe we ought to consider, you know, having it turfed in the spring or something. I know autumn is usually better, but you know, spring or autumn, one or the other would probably be okay.
Yeah, we've got a village hall committee meeting in about a month's time anyway, so
we have to leave it to the village hall committee to sort that out.
Yeah. Well, it's up to you. I think that's probably the best idea.
I'm sorry?
I think it's probably the best idea of the village hall committee. She organises it.
Well, well, is someone going to take an action to talk to the school? Kate's idea about giving the school the opportunity to take it on as a project?
I'll have a word with Christine and she'll mention it to Julie.
Or even Acorn. Just, don't know. It's just something that children really like to do, and some of them don't actually get an opportunity to do things like that. So.
Well, it may be that the reason the lawn's in the state it's in is because the preschool dug it up.
Pile it. Slab it.
All right. I'll have a word with Christine. She'll pass it to Julie. Right. Next one then is consider the position of the commemorative rugby post in the sports ground. I know this will hurt Andrew. The one is very, very wonky now.
The actual position of the commemorative rugby post in the sports ground is actually 45 degrees because it's toppling over. So
the leaning tower.
The leaning rugby posts of Castlethorpe. So it does need rectifying. The sports ground association are not too happy with it because I think it was sort of imposed on them without them wanting it. So one idea is that we take them down and then donate them to a local rugby club because they are of interest to rugby clubs because they're commemorative of the World Cup being held at Stadium MK.
Sorry, can I step one back from that? And one option is not to take them down, but maybe to ask a rugby club if they want them and get
them to do it.
Them to take them down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of the points that we do need to check, and Andrew may be able to help us here, is we actually got those from Milton Keynes Council as part of the World Cup commemorations, and I don't know whether there were any commitments that we took on either explicitly or implicitly that we would keep those. And basically, I'm not even sure, Andrew, whether they're our posts to give away. Do you happen to know what the answer to that is?
I don't know what the answer is, but I can fairly easily find out. I think they are your posts. I mean, you basically, you know, they offered them around. You basically expressed interest and got one. And at the time, you're the only parish in the ward in my ward that did. I don't know what the situation is, Phil. To be perfectly honest, I think I don't think you're explicitly under any obligation to keep them or maintain them or do anything else with them particularly. But I will find out from Jeff Nelson.
Could you? And Steve, I think what would be particularly nice is if we haven't got a good place. I mean, I remember walking up there with Ian and I don't know, someone else from the sports committee at the time. I don't think it was before Russell's time, and trying to find a place, and that was almost the only place that we could see where it fit in. But if that's no good and we want to get rid of them, it would be nice to see if our neighbours would be interested. So you know, if you could perhaps ask Hanslope or Havisham whether they would have any interest in the rugby posts or not, the commemorative rugby posts.
Well, a man that, and I did mean to have a word with him today on a kind of no commitment basis, is Tony Rice, who's very, very tied into the rugby community. And I was I was going to suggest, because be it a parish council or be it a local club or something like that, we're still serving the local community.
Yes. Yeah, no, Tony Rice would be good, but I certainly would, if we can't use it, my next place where I'd really like to see it would be Hounslow or Havisham.
If they want it.
If they want it.
Have a word with
Fly
Jill.
tipping.
Sorry?
Yeah,
Fly
station,
tip it.
Station Road car park.
Yeah, that'll do.
Kay's been very patient. Kay?
Does rugby ever get played there?
No.
No,
Is there no rugby club in the village?
Nope.
no.
No.
Why not?
Tony Rice did a kind of rugby training. I've got a feeling it was no tackling rugby, but they didn't, even then they didn't use those posts. They used some, I think they may have used the old goal posts or something, but they didn't use that. So it's never been used in sport.
It is a glorious game.
It is.
No, the idea of it actually was that they only gave you one set of posts because they were actively encouraging you not to set up places to play rugby, because rugby played unsupervised and in an unorganised way can actually be fairly dangerous. So it was basically one set of posts to commemorate the World Cup if you wanted them.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, well, look, the actions are Andrew will check about legitimacy. Steve will talk to Tony Rice and to our neighbours and see if they've any interest.
Could I ask Andrew and George, so who's Havisham Clark now? Have they got a new one?
Yes. And I can't remember who it is. She was at their... she was attending their last meeting, but kind of sitting there quietly learning the ropes. If we speak to Pam Williams, she'll tell us who it is. But yeah, yes, they have, and I believe I'm right in saying it's actually somebody who lives in the village.
Oh, that's good.
So who's Pam Williams?
Chairman. I've got her email
Pam's
address.
chairman at Havisham.
Yeah, I'll write to Pam and ask. In fact, I'll ask Pam if they're interested. Steve, take that one off you.
Well, do you want me to wait till you've done that to ask Jill, or do you want me to
Well, I
ask
think
her?
we need Andrew. No, I prefer Hanslope first, to be honest. But I
Yes.
think we need Andrew just to confirm their house to give away.
So yeah, Andrew to confirm.
I'll email Jeff in the morning.
Then when I hear from you, Andrew, I'll get in touch with Jill at Hanslope. See
Yeah.
if they want them.
And if they don't, then let me know, Steve, and I'll contact Pam Williams. Right, that's next one is 7-Eleven replacing the manual lock for the toilets with a digital replacement. Russell, do you have a quote for that?
I think it was about £150, Steve, wasn't it?
Okay.
It was about that. I meant to look it up, but
Yeah.
time got in the way. I
Okay,
think it's
so
about 150.
I mean, if it's a variant, it will be within your clerk's discretion. So can I ask for all in favour of that? Yeah, that's great. Now, Dave has been getting a bit fed up with the dog mess outside his house, so wishes to propose the next motion. Do you have to declare an interest?
Oh, hilarious. Oh, hang on, what's happened to my screen?
We can see you just fine.
Yeah, we've got you there.
Okay, fine. Well, something's happened to it. To be honest, I was looked at that letter from the firm that looks after them came out in January, didn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that was following me reporting the bin overflowing, which was a sort of one-off. I can't see that the bin has actually overflowed ever since then.
Well, Mark has
I'm
been
not
telling us, Dave, that it's consistently full. I mean,
Yeah.
and like
Well-
one of the services they provide is monitoring the amount of poo we get in the bins.
Yeah,
And Marcus is telling us the reason it's dated way back then is that Marcus emailed me and it went straight into spam.
right.
So he phoned me up the other day and said, why aren't you answering me? I said, I haven't heard
Yeah.
from you.
Well, in that case, it's a bit of a no-brainer then, isn't it? We need to replace the bin.
Which bin is it?
It's the one in
Sorry?
the checkers we're talking about.
It's the one at
It's
by
my pride and
Dave's
joy.
house.
My pride and joy.
Yeah. Can I just check though? When I looked at the two pictures that were attached, Steve, the new one looked the same size as the old one. I mean, it might. I know it was red rather than green, but I mean,
Well, I mean, it'll obviously be green, but
It's 14 kilograms bigger, isn't it?
yeah, it is
40
big.
kilograms. What of what it contains?
That'd do my boy for about a couple of days, I think.
But seriously, it is bigger, is it?
It is bigger.
Okay. And it's basically, are these prices still right? I saw there was a second quote, actually. I didn't quite understand that.
Well, no, what is done is actually provided a quote for the purchase of the bin, and then on his email he's put the cost of labour to fit it.
Right, okay. We certainly don't want to fit it because we don't know what the old one's going to be full of. So, well, we do, and that's why we don't want to fit it. Is this a straightforward all in favour?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
What is David's recommendation then?
Yeah.
Replace the existing bin with a larger one.
Oh,
His
thank
own
you.
proposal. Are you in favour, Dave?
Yeah. Not
Disappeared
off.
now, Dave.
I've
Very
never
good.
favoured anything so much in all my life.
Right. So that's a dog bin. Right. 7.13. Consider any actions arising from the reopening of the village hall and play areas. Is there anything else above what we've already said, Russell?
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on. I say I've been nominated to do this one. I can't think of anything, to be honest.
I think we probably covered it under the preceding items. Right. 7.12, which is really another 7.12, 7.14 it should be.
7.14.
To fund the fitting of a kitchen donated to the Sports Association for the football pavilion. And Russell, this was down to you again.
Yes, a very kind lady who is a relation to one of our members here has actually donated a kitchen to the football club to fit in the football pavilion. So basically, they just want us to pay for the cost of fitting it as landlords.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the cost will be, but it shouldn't be very much.
The cost will depend on whether the handyman can do it or not. I mean, he has a problem with sciatica, and is going to go and have a look to see if he can actually, if it's going to be comfortable to fit it. If he is, he will do so. If not, then we would have to get someone in to do it. Yes. But as you say, it's, looking at the lease, it is a responsibility of the landlord to provide decent facilities, and the current kitchen is not fit for purpose. So this is a cheap way for us to actually be able to re-equip the building.
Yeah, indeed.
Now, is an existing kitchen to be recited, or is it a brand new kitchen?
Existing.
Oh, brilliant! That's perfect.
There's a very generous family that donated it.
Right.
Somebody who's smiling, and it's not me or Steve.
Yeah. Right. Are we? So what is this is basically with Richard to decide whether he can fit it. If he can, you'll deal with it within your discretionary amount.
Well, my discretionary amount, Phil, is creeping up all the time, and I think it's a total amount of £500. And I think you've already nibbled away of about 400 of it.
Right. Well, what do you want to do then? Do you want a resolution here to allow you some extra money? I mean, what is it? A couple of days' work for Richard?
You see, I just don't know. I don't know what to suggest here. I mean, I think it's probably get Richard to do it on the assumption that it won't cost a lot. I just don't know what to suggest, actually.
I mean, for 2 days' work, you know, I mean, we'll come on to you know, talk about some of the other handyman in part 2, but I mean, I know that a skilled chap who can do plumbing and all the rest of it would be about £200 a day. I can't believe that the number of units that are going to go in that football pavilion are going to be more than a couple of days' work.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone's laughing.
I can't believe there's enough room in that building for a kitchen.
Well, it's not a kitchen; it's kitchen units. I mean,
yeah, it's kitchen units,
and it's a sink and some cupboards, basically.
It's not like a Dave Hines
But why do they need that?
Making tea,
Making tea,
sandwiches.
making sandwiches, you know, bacon butties, stuff like that.
Okay.
Women like kitchens, you know. Good kitchen's really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about a football club though
This is
here.
a hot.
Doesn't
Look,
matter. If you're gonna, if they're
Well,
gonna host it, if they're gonna have like tea after and sandwiches every now and again you're gonna have something like we had the barbecue to open the sports equipment. I think that sort of thing it's important.
but it's the
Yeah.
landlord's responsibility to provide decent facilities. At the moment, the facilities aren't decent. If you want to approve up to say £500, and it won't cost anything like that, but that will give some wiggle room.
I think that probably is an appropriate amount just to go there, because it was 2 days work, it might be 400 quid labour plus odd bits and bobs.
If it's Richard, it will be a lot less than that.
Yeah,
But
it's Richard
that will
would be less
just
than
get
that, yeah.
us into work too.
So Richard has first call on it.
Yeah.
So shall we propose that then? Is that what you'd like, Russell?
Yes.
£500. Yeah. All in favour, please. Yeah. Okay. Very
You're going to
good.
get loads of quotes at £499 now because everybody's seen it on Facebook.
I hope Richard will do it, so we won't have to have any quotes at all.
Yeah. Well, yes, it will be competitive. Yes, you're quite right. Right. Shall we move now on to the finance schedule, which you say I've got now. So I need to. Oh, someone's been writing to me. George, you've been writing to me.
Yeah, I forwarded you that email about the consultation.
Right. Hang on a minute. I've just got to.
Oh, God.
Just hold on a minute, because I've got to show this.
Past Dave's bedtime.
Correct.
Now let's see if I can share this screen.
Do you want me just to run through it, Phil?
Oh, it's gone blank. Oh no, well done. Very good.
All right. So actually, I haven't had a chance to look at this myself because it came out. So what have we got? We've got the usual Steve cleaning, landscaping, that fence. Yeah, I've yeah, that fence that has been erected. We agreed. Simon Bates, what is that?
Oh, I haven't put it in. That was the weed killing the village. I did put it in. I must have deleted it by mistake. But that was weed spraying the village, the second of 3.
Okay. Various little works from Richard. Do you know, it's so good having those litter bins emptied, you know.
Yeah, it is.
It's just so good.
Does a good job.
Yeah.
Oh, he does. The invoices for Brian Shaler, they went astray as well. Brian sent them a while ago. So Russell, that's work that Brian's done since March.
Okay. Then usual consumables for cleaning the village hall. Actually, you've got Simon Bates in a second time there. Presumably he's only in once, is he?
Yeah, it was only once. So one of those entries I'll delete, Phil.
Okay. All right. I'll Marcus Young clean the bins. Landscape maintenance, Cayman Code, the annual insurance. Okay.
Yeah, that annual insurance includes.
I have to declare an interest here, don't I?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah,
I need to.
I forgot.
So did I. Right.
Phil,
so John, you need to take over.
Well, the accounts are before you. Has anyone any questions they wish to raise on them?
Yes, the subtotal at the bottom is wrong.
yeah, it patently obviously is, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I'll correct that.
In fact, both subtotals are wrong.
Yeah, I'll correct that before you guys sign it.
Yeah.
Can we leave that with you, Steve?
Yep.
Lovely. Any other questions from any other councillors on the accounts before you?
Nope.
Can I ask for those in favour?
The proposer and
We want a
second.
proposer and a seconder, which isn't Phil.
I'll propose.
Thank
I'll
you, Russell.
second.
Thank you. That's proposed, Russell, second, Kay. All in favour?
Marvellous.
Right. I now hand back to the chair.
Right, lovely. Thank you. So next is renewing MALT membership. I think the invoices have come out. Well, that's on here. You've already approved that, so we don't need to do that. S106 funds. Do you just want to briefly update the meeting, Steve, on where we are with that?
Yeah, I spoke to Paul Van Geet today, and he said that he hadn't received my emails, that I sent it twice. It was rather weird because I sent them to his Milton Keynes Council mailbox again, and he didn't receive it while I was talking to him. And then I sent it to the group's mailbox, and he did. So he's got it now. He is going to send it round for comment to, I think he said, to ward councillors. I don't know. Andrew? George? Is that something that you do as part of an S106? He said ward members. So anyway, is circulating it for comment, including to ourselves. And if he receives no comments, then he will pay us before next meeting.
Okay. And just as a small aside, as you know, we have actually spent more than the amount of S106 for in a category which is called physical works for the village, which was one category of expenditure. Steve had put in the litter bins. I noticed that there is an item on the S106 schedule for waste receptacles, which at the end of January of this year still had £4,000 in it. We spent about £800 on these litter bins. So I have been writing to various people, and I'm now with Sarah Evans, just trying to say, you know, could we use some of that waste receptacles money, which is normally a Milton Keynes Council budget, but they haven't drawn it down, and it's 6 years now since those houses were completed. And if they don't use it by 2024, then it goes back to the developer, which would be a, you know, great shame, having worked hard to negotiate that money for us. I have asked Tracy, and again repeated today, please could they reconsider that and just check whether they have any intention of drawing down that money. She was kind of saying, oh, well, it's only meant to be if it's necessary for a development. And I've pointed out that things like the outdoor gym, which we've used from another category, are, you know, in exactly the same category. They're used by all members of the, you know, all residents in the village. Anyway, we'll see where that goes. Right, 8.4. Is I almost am inclined to ask Dave to propose this, because he's bearing the brunt of all the phone calls he has to make to Bank of Ireland. I had one abortive attempt to call to them, but they are just, it's really, really hard. We don't even know who the list of signatories are at the moment, do we, or who's on the list?
I did ask Dave once, and I meant to ask you if you could remember, Dave.
I thought that they were going to send it to you, Steve. That was about 6 months ago when I asked for that.
Yeah, they didn't send me a list of signatories.
Oh.
I mean, we've still probably got people like Luke Stacey and probably even Julian Prescott Collins.
Julian was on it, yeah.
I mean,
Geraldine.
And my personal view is that we ought to move this account to another bank where there is a branch office near to us. You know, I relate the story on with the MALC signatories, where the chairman, a lady called Jean Nicholas, literally got everyone on the executive committee, said, you will be at the bank with your passport and with a utility bill at such and such a time. When we got to the bank, she said to them, we are not leaving until these signatures are sorted out. And that's almost the sort of thing you have to do. Every parish council I've come across has problems changing its signatories.
Yeah.
So trying to do it with a bank that doesn't have a branch near us is close to impossible. And their security is just horrendous. I mean, when I rang up, they asked me 1 or 2 questions, like how many signatures were there was one of their questions. And I said, well, theoretically it's 7. So she said, no, failed, can't take you any further. So I said, ask me another question. No, I mean, it's just hopeless.
The Bank of Ireland ringing.
Bank of Ireland.
We do actually have a viewer in Dublin, according to Facebook. The audience has dwindled to 10 now.
Is that including us, Russell?
I think they better declare an interest.
No, this is, well, it includes me because I'm looking at it on my phone. But yeah, so there's 9 other people and me.
Can we say hello to them personally?
No, I just got
greetings too.
I've just got the numbers. However, if you are listening and you would like to comment, we can see from your names and we'll give you a personal greeting. Nobody's commenting.
No comments about how bad we look on webcam though. Okay.
When I looked at the YouTube feed, it was running about 2 minutes behind us.
Really?
Oh, okay.
I can see. It's all right now, but I could see that the circle thing was going round in the middle.
I bet it's really good in Western Underwood, though, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, with high-speed internet.
Be cracking there, Dave.
Oh yeah.
Not yet. No one has actually got the fibres of the house yet. It's in the street. It leaps out of the cabinets and waves its little tentacles at us, but we haven't got it. And my postcode is going to be the last one in the bloody village that gets it.
Oh, George.
What speed?
Phil's still. Go on, sorry, Russell.
What speed is it going to be, George?
I haven't got the foggiest idea.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah.
Steve, Ian is saying he didn't get the papers and the details of the call-in.
I dropped the papers through his letterbox at I think 12 o'clock, 12:30.
Well, can you call him tomorrow? I mean, to be honest, he's been carving cows and packing meat and things.
Actually,
I hope the 2 aren't related, but
I did give him an agenda. I sent him an agenda last week with everybody else, and I dropped another copy of the agenda. I don't think I wrote. I might not have given him explicit joining instructions.
oh dear. Well, you better call him tomorrow and give him your apologies then, Steve. Yeah. All right, let's move on now. I've told him where we are.
We're all unduly grateful.
He knows it's tonight, though, Chair.
He did know it's tonight. He's only just remembered. But anyway.
Well, I dropped papers through his letterbox at about 12:30 today.
Yeah, but he's saying you didn't have the calling in instructions.
So he could have called me and told me that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Phil, he would have got on the email that you sent with all the instructions. I mean, he is on email.
Yeah, but he doesn't pick them up.
Yeah.
Oh.
So let's not
Okay.
deal with it. It's
Moving on.
right. Moving on. We've had this correspondence on flooding problems, properties on Bullington End Road.
Sorry,
Andrew?
Phil. Did we conclude 8.4? I've not recorded.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I'm sorry. I recommended it. Are we okay with Steve basically investigating a move to another bank for the deposit account?
Yes.
I think I'd rather the finance committee did that.
Okay, finance committee. So that's
Yes.
Darren, Kay, and Russell.
Yeah.
Am I on it? I can't remember.
Yes.
Yes, okay, the 4 of us then. Okay, and we will look at that. Yes.
Could I just ask why you went to Bank of Ireland in the first place?
For my time.
Right.
I think it was
I think it was a good interest rate at the time.
Best rate.
That's right, Steve. That's right. Yeah.
Not anymore.
No.
No.
The next hurdle is, will they let you take the money away if you don't guess the right amount of signatures, Chair?
Well, that is very true. But anyway, one bridge at a time, yeah?
Okay.
Number 9.1, flooding problems. Andrew's taken this up, referred it to Andrew Dickinson. We wound in 2 other properties which Andrew and George have picked up, which is 44 The Checkers, which is the one that you raised, Dave. Oh, I shouldn't be saying these addresses, should I? And one in the Chestnuts, which I think, George, you're progressing, where there was some flooding in the garden. Andrew Dickinson gave us quite a good immediate response, Andrew, but I have to say he's not actually responded again. I've not seen any progress on.
No, neither have I. I did send him a follow-up today, just saying we had a meeting tonight. Was there any further progress? And I've not heard anything from him. So I'll probably get something in the next couple of days. But it is with him. He did come back, and I mean, Andy usually does get onto things, but he's not the swiftest. So yeah, we'll if you know, I say I have chased him. I'll let you know what I hear.
Okay, thank you. And 10.1 is just any other business for noting or including in a future agenda. Is just the handyman's reported picking up black bags that have been left around the village. I have seen them next to the bus stop before now. John, did you want to say something?
Only, Chair, that I'm slightly concerned about the state of the road in the centre of the village, which seems to be collapsing in the middle, and about the large amount of carnage being done by the lorries pelting down Station Road, because there's potholes appearing everywhere. Question, is the 106 agreement with the development in Hanslope has sufficient funds to prepare some of this stuff? Because these are not happening through our fault. These are main ways for development. So surely developers should be putting a bit in the pot to repair this.
The short answer is no, they don't. If they cause specific damage, for example, the specific damage that was caused in Fox Covert Lane by deliveries of mobile homes, then they can, if they track it down and can say, yes, it was that vehicle, then they can claim the money back from them and make them repair it. If it's just general wear and tear on the road, then highways may well have taken a general sum from them under the S106, but it's up to highways to decide whether they're going to spend it and bring the road back up to standard. But the road you're talking about is the stretch in front of the Chestnuts, basically, is it?
That is it, Chair.
Yeah, I've noticed that starting to collapse. And actually, I think that there's a big drain or culvert under that road, which is slowly collapsing. We do know that there are tree roots growing into the drain there, because Carl Devereaux, the drains man, has told me that. So they recognise that tree roots are causing damage, and I suspect that the heavy lorries are causing that damage. Which is one reason, of course, why we didn't want the lorries for Hanslope going through that bit, but Station Road as well. Kay?
The bit by the pub as well, pub to the village hall, across there. That is, I mean, there's like a cellar that runs underneath the road. I can't imagine that's going to be in very good condition either. Yeah.
So are you saying that the what's called the gold, I think it was, the gold tarmac is collapsing? I hadn't noticed that.
I think it's just sunk a little bit. I'm not sure about collapsing, but yeah. Okay. I think it's worth an investigation, that's all.
Okay. And Station Road. And was that Russell? Did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I want to raise something else once we've dealt with the road road issues. It's
sorry, have we dealt with the road issues?
I'll report it. I'll report it.
Oh, okay.
I'm requesting it. Okay, Russell.
Right, I was going to say that now that the parish council website's been up and running for quite a long time, is it time now to eventually close down the village website? That's I think the village website is a parish council run website, isn't it?
Effectively, it is. Yeah.
Yes.
Andrew, did you want to say something on that?
Not on that. So I was just indicating to come in when everybody else is finished.
Okay.
If I may, just with a couple of bits for information.
Yeah, I mean, Dave.
Direct on it. Would
No,
you have
you're muted, Dave. You're muted, Dave.
The buttons. Yeah, I was going to say what Kay just said. Would there be an automatic redirect once we've closed it?
No, there wouldn't. But there would be. I was thinking about three months where people would be redirected.
Yeah.
Once it's closed, then that's it. It's closed.
I mean, to be honest, you know, I use the new website now. It's much better than the old one. The only thing I don't like about it hasn't got the pictures that I took on the top of it.
Yeah.
Apart from that, it's the content is much more accessible than the old one. Dave.
I think you've just answered us in a roundabout way, Russell. If there's a 3-month redirect on it and then you close it, then there's not an issue, is there?
Yeah.
The issue is this section is for noting or raising on a future agenda. You're not allowed to make decisions, so perhaps put it on the next agenda.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Kay?
Just different topic. The pub. There's a huge. I mean, Ollie can actually get his hand in the crack that goes down the wall in the pub now. That wall is just literally coming away, and I don't know. What do we do? Do we report it again?
Okay. John, would you like to comment on that?
Kay is absolutely right. I visited the pub yesterday, and you can get your hand and your arm. And Ollie's quite a big lad, you know. If he's doing it, I believe that wall has shifted in the last 6 months, and that is quite dangerous. Happily take that up if you want us to. We'll do that.
Yeah, would you? Because I think you're aware of some contacts that have been had there, John. So
I am, and we need to follow through on one of the issues of the pub, and that can be a good catalyst for making us do that.
That'd be great.
Right, Andrew, you had a point to raise. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I hit the wrong button. I think on that last one, Simon Peart and Martin Ellison would be delighted to hear from you. I was disappointed with all the pubs reopening over the weekend that one didn't, but there we go. We've only been waiting about 10 years, haven't we? Two things, Chair. One probably considerably more important than the other. I noticed under planning tonight that you didn't raise or didn't possibly have, because I only saw it at the end of last week, the application from Cosgrove Lodge Caravan Park regarding replacing quite a large number of I'm trying to get the right terms, but they want to put statics in place of the touring caravans. That's the one. Steve, had you picked up on it? I don't know whether you'd seen it.
I thought that the deadline was after our next meeting if we hold it in August, but
you could well be right. I'm not even sure it's your parish or whether it's Haversham's.
Well, yeah, it is. I think it is our parish, Andrew. But I think I can't remember. I did see it and I did come to some conclusion, but I can't remember what that conclusion was. It was after I published the agenda.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it came in after you published the agenda, but just knowing the blessed short time frames they give these days for you to comment, it may come up before your next meeting, and it may be one that you just need to note tonight that you may need to delegate to be commented on before your next meeting, because I suspect if they're going to want to take that number up Fox Covert Lane, it's going to cause a few issues, shall we say?
That's what helicopters are for.
Yeah,
helicopter them in overhead, drop them.
Russell,
yeah, that'd be a very good comment to make to a traffic management plan, Kate.
Yeah, Steve, could you check on the return date, see if it's behind or after the 3rd of August, which I think is the date that we're looking for. If it is before then, ask for an extension on the basis that this came in after you'd published the agenda for this meeting. If not, we'll have to have an extraordinary meeting if necessary. Okay.
On a serious note, on taking the static homes through Fox Covert, there must be a weight limit on that bridge that they have to go over. So surely that would be worth bringing up.
Yeah, we have raised this before. I mean, Ian has always been very hot on the weight limit on that, which I think is something like 7.5 tons or something.
Yeah, but that's per axle.
Yeah, but Network Rail have, and we've raised it with Network Rail, and they've not said. But look, let's have that discussion when we talk about the application. Not have it now. Anything else, Andrew?
Yeah, that's right. The second one was just of interest, given that I know Russell had said several things about it on the village Facebook page, and one thing and another. The planning inspector has issued his decision on the stables today, and it is not good news. They have not enforced the deed of easement, and they have awarded full cost to the developer against Milton Keynes Council.
Oh, that's
what?
Yeah. I think I can share this publicly. I actually went and visited Monica Ferguson at the stables last week in my role as mayor. To say they're struggling with everything that's going on would be an understatement. I think the announcement from Rishi Sunak yesterday was probably a bit of a lifeline to them. And I have to say, I don't think I'm over-egging it by saying that I think this has actually put another death nail in the coffin, and I'm really, really concerned about the stables now.
Yeah.
Is
and
there
there's no appeal, is there, or not for that, Andrew?
No.
Unless there is no. I mean, that's the planning inspector, and they've done it. They've come back and called every member of the development control committee that made that decision to try and enforce it unreasonable. I've had a right strop at. I've had a right strop at my. I kind of threw my toys out and vented my spleen in front of every other councillor, hitting the reply to all buttons. And I seldom do it, but I did tonight because there are just. I think there's an awful lot of times that I'm perceived as being unreasonable, and some of those might be reasonable to call me unreasonable. And in this instance, I'm very pleased to have been called unreasonable.
Yeah, we can't ask the Secretary of State, or not we, but Milton Keynes Council can't ask the Secretary of State to take it back and look at it.
No, not once it's been determined. The only way is that if something's been missed and there's a loophole or a route in for JR, which I'm sure the stables legal team will be all over and looking for. I don't. I mean, I haven't read the whole judgment. I've read the headline and the fact that he's awarded costs against us and that has considered us to be ultra unreasonable. But that apart, no, you can only get the Secretary of State involved if before you get them before the judgment is issued, and it hasn't. It's come out.
Okay. All right. Well, that's bad news. Very bad news. Next parish council meeting. So for the reasons I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's probably better if we hold a general meeting, our normal monthly meeting in August. We normally skip it, but this will allow us to sort out the annual report. Steve's had great difficulty, which actually relates back to this Bank of Ireland issue that we discussed earlier, in getting bank statements from the bank, to the point that it delayed his discussions with Jane Olive, and means that he couldn't put the annual report before us. So we've probably got a planning application, the Cosgrove Park one, to consider anyway. We probably will have to pay people on a monthly basis. It's always very awkward asking them to wait 2 months. I propose, therefore, that we have this meeting on. Well, I will call a meeting on the 3rd of August. Okay, so that's the end of this meeting.
Chair, is that going to be a Zoom meeting?
It will be, yes.
You are continuing to meet electronically, even though you are legally allowed back in the village hall and legally allowed to gather in this sort of numbers?
Yes, we're also legally allowed to hold our meetings by video conference until May of next year. And until someone brings a resolution asking for it to be changed, I have to say my preference is that we continue this way for a whole series of reasons. But, yeah. Okay. Anyway, the next one certainly will be in this way.
I actually don't like the long commute from my house to the village hall, so I'm quite happy.
Okay. Right, we have a part. Sorry, did you want to say something, John?
Chair, can I just ask Andrew, vis-a-vis the pub, you said Simon Peake will be. What was the other name you said?
Martin Ellison.
Simon Peart and Martin Ellison.
Yeah, Martin works for Simon. You'll write to Simon. He helped us a lot with our
Yeah.
That neighbourhood plan, actually.
No,
Simon,
I know him. I thought he mentioned a name that I hadn't heard before. I'm sorry, I just didn't get it down. That's okay.
If you're going into part 2, and George and I are allowed to stay for that, I might say something that I'm not going to say publicly, but I'll tell you when you go into part 2.
Okay. So if we finish part 1, I'm going to now end the live feed.
Okay.
Bye, people.
Bye, people.